They say blood is thicker than water. But nobody ever mentions that blood can also drown you faster than any ocean ever could. I was staring at my phone screen in disbelief. The Instagram photo burning into my retinas like acid. There was my sister Brittany, 25 years old and supposedly too broke to help with mom's medical bills, lounging by an infinity pool in Maui with a tropical cocktail that probably cost more than most people's hourly wage. The caption read, "Living my best life," with a string of palm tree and sun emojis. The timestamp showed it was posted 3 hours ago, which meant she was there right now. While I was sitting in my office at 11 at night, trying to figure out how to juggle my business expenses with the unexpected medical costs that had just landed in my lap. My name is Alyssa Thorne. And at 29, I thought I had finally figured out how to navigate the complicated dynamics of my family. I owned Thorne Marketing Solutions LLC, a boutique marketing consultancy that I had built from nothing but determination and countless sleepless nights. The business was my baby. My proof that the responsible daughter could make something of herself despite always being overshadowed by my younger sister's dramatic needs and my mother Eleanor's endless excuses for her. The call had come 3 days ago while I was preparing for the most important pitch of my quarter. A potential client worth $500,000 in annual revenue was waiting. But Mom's trembling voice on the phone made everything else fade into background noise. She needed surgery. Not life-threatening but urgent enough that the doctors wanted to schedule it within the week. The procedure itself wasn't overly complex. Something about a compressed nerve that was causing her increasing pain and mobility issues. But the cost was astronomical. Medicare would cover some of it eventually, she said. But the hospital wanted payment up front. I remember the exact moment I made the decision to help. I was standing in the hospital corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, watching my mother fill out endless forms with shaking hands. Her face was drawn with pain. And for once, she looked every one of her 50 years. The business checking account had enough to cover it. But that money was earmarked for quarterly taxes and vendor payments. Using it would put me in a precarious position. But what kind of daughter would I be if I let my mother suffer when I had the means to help? The solution seemed simple enough. I would open a small personal credit card, just enough to cover the immediate medical expenses, and pay it off as soon as Mom's Medicare reimbursement came through. I was meticulous about it, applying online for a basic card with a modest limit, something I could manage without impacting my business credit. The card would arrive in a few days, just in time for the surgery. But when Mom handed me a card the next day, saying she had found it in her purse and thought it was the one I had mentioned, my blood ran cold. The card gleamed gold in the harsh hospital lighting, its weight substantial in my hand. This wasn't the simple personal card I had applied for. This was my business credit card. The premium one with the $100,000 limit that I had locked away months ago for emergencies only. My name was embossed on it. But I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't given this to her. The confrontation with Brittany happened over the phone. And I could hear the ocean waves in the background as she laughed at my accusations. Her voice was light, careless, as if we were discussing borrowed nail polish instead of massive credit fraud. She actually had the audacity to tell me I was overreacting, that the $100,000 she had charged was just a drop in the bucket for someone as successful as me, when I demanded she return immediately and pay back what she had stolen. She laughed harder and said I should be grateful she was finally living the life she deserved after years of being overshadowed by perfect, responsible Alyssa. The credit card statement painted a picture of obscene excess. First-class flights to Hawaii booked 3 weeks ago, when Brittany had been crying to Mom about not being able to afford her rent. A suite at the Four Seasons Maui at $3,000 per night. Designer shopping sprees at Chanel and Louis Vuitton. Spa treatments that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Restaurant bills with bottles of champagne that ran into the thousands. She hadn't just stolen from me. She had done it with deliberate, calculated extravagance. I immediately called my business lawyer, Maya Jenkins, a woman who had built her reputation on being utterly ruthless when it came to corporate fraud. Maya listened to my story without interrupting, her silence more ominous than any expression of outrage could have been. When I finished, she asked me a simple question that would change everything. Did I want to handle this as a family matter or a legal one? The old Alyssa would have chosen family, would have tried to smooth things over, would have absorbed the loss to keep the peace. But looking at those transactions, seeing my sister's smiling face from Hawaii while I worked myself to exhaustion, something fundamental shifted inside me. I told Maya to pursue both civil and criminal charges. The decision felt like stepping off a cliff, but also like finally taking a full breath after years of suffocation. Maya outlined the plan with military precision. We would file a fraud report with the bank immediately, compile all evidence, including transaction logs and GPS data from Brittany's social media posts. And because the amount exceeded $50,000, it would trigger a federal investigation. This wasn't going to be a slap on the wrist. This was going to be serious. That evening, I sent Brittany a single text message telling her to enjoy her piña colada because the fraud unit would be contacting her soon. Her response was 3 laughing emojis followed by a voice message where she mockingly reminded me that we were family and family didn't do this to each other. The irony of her statement would have been laughable if it hadn't been so painful. I screenshot everything and forwarded it to Maya with a note that said she had just provided us with evidence of consciousness of guilt. The next morning, Mom called me, and her voice had lost all pretense of weakness. She was angry, coldly furious in a way I had rarely heard. She told me I needed to drop this immediately, that it was just money and wasn't worth destroying our family over. When I tried to explain that Brittany had committed a federal crime, she cut me off and said that Brittany had made a mistake, that she was young and didn't understand the consequences. 25 years old was hardly young, and charging $100,000 to someone else's business credit card was hardly a mistake. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Maya filed the fraud report on Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the bank had frozen all pending transactions and initiated a formal investigation. By Wednesday, Brittany's own accounts were frozen as she tried to pay for her lavish breakfast and found her cards declined. My phone began ringing non-stop with calls from unknown numbers. Voicemails from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. All of them with the same message wrapped in different levels of emotional manipulation. How could I do this to my own sister? Didn't I know that family was supposed to protect each other? Wasn't I successful enough to absorb this loss? The pressure intensified when Eleanor called me again, this time with an ultimatum. She said that if I continued with the charges, the family would have to choose sides, and she made it clear which side she would be on. The threat hung between us like a blade. But instead of filling me with fear, it filled me with a strange sense of clarity. I had been choosing sides my whole life, always choosing them, always putting their needs before mine, always being the responsible one who fixed everything while they created more chaos. I opened a hidden folder on my laptop labeled When They Forget and looked through years of evidence I had been collecting without really knowing why. Bank transfer screenshots showing the rent I had paid for Brittany when she was supposedly studying but actually partying. Tuition payments for courses she never completed. Bail money when she got arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. Loans to Mom that were never mentioned again, let alone repaid. Text messages where they discussed my success with resentment rather than pride. It was a catalog of financial and emotional exploitation that stretched back nearly a decade. That night, I posted a single sentence on my business Instagram that read, "Sometimes the only way to fix what's broken is to stop allowing the people who broke it to hold the glue." The comments section exploded with support from other business owners who had faced similar family dynamics. But by morning, my car had been vandalized. Eggs thrown at the windshield with enough force to crack it in a spiderweb pattern. The security camera I had installed after Maya warned me about possible retaliation caught a shadowy figure and a partial license plate that I immediately forwarded to both Maya and the police. 2 days later, Brittany was formally served with a summons. The next morning, she appeared at my door, not knocking, just standing there with her arms crossed and sunglasses hiding her eyes despite the overcast weather. She couldn't believe I was taking this to court, she said. Did I really want to destroy my own sister over money? I looked at her standing there, still tanned from her Hawaiian vacation that she had taken with my money, still wearing designer clothes she had bought with my credit, and felt nothing but exhaustion. I told her this wasn't about money. It was about respect, boundaries, and consequences. She had taken more than funds. She had taken my identity and worn it like a costume to buy herself a fantasy. When she called me selfish and cold, I simply handed her a copy of the summons and told her she had 10 days to respond or it would proceed to default judgment. Then I closed the door on her protests and threats. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Peace. I realized, didn't mean avoiding conflict. Sometimes it meant finally being willing to fight the war you had been pretending didn't exist. The next few weeks were a blur of legal documents and family warfare. Brittany's initial response was silence, which was somehow more unnerving than her threats. Maya continued building our case, and the bank's investigation revealed even more damaging evidence. IP addresses with timestamps, device logs, and a failed login attempt from Brittany's apartment on the day she had first activated the business card. The insurance company's response was swift and decisive. My claim was approved for full fraud protection, and all the charges were reversed. My business account was restored to its proper balance, and I thought that would be the end of it. But Maya explained that once insurance paid out, they had the right to pursue the perpetrator for reimbursement. Now it wasn't just me seeking justice. It was a multi-billion-dollar insurance corporation with unlimited legal resources. Brittany's midnight email arrived when she finally understood the gravity of her situation. She wrote like a martyr, claiming she had been going through so much when she took the card, that Mom's illness had made her panic, that she hadn't been thinking clearly. The lies were so transparent they were almost insulting. Mom's health issues had started 3 days ago, but Brittany had booked her Hawaii trip 3 weeks ago. I forwarded the email to Maya with a single-line response to Brittany telling her to negotiate with the insurance company because they were her creditors now. Eleanor's final attempt at emotional manipulation came in the form of an email asking what kind of daughter ruins her family just to prove a point. I didn't respond, but I wanted to ask her what kind of mother stands by while one daughter systematically steals from another and calls it family loyalty. The court date arrived, faster than expected, and the courtroom was cold and sterile. All white walls and fluorescent lights. Brittany sat across from me in a carefully chosen beige sweater, trying to project an image of humble contrition that couldn't have been further from the truth. When the prosecutor asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood up with perfect clarity. I told the court about the medical emergency that had started this. The card I had opened to help our mother. The moment I discovered the theft. I talked about seeing those Hawaii photos and hearing my sister's laughter echoing through them louder than any apology she had never offered. I concluded by saying she hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen trust, taken my identity, and worn it like a mask to purchase a vacation from reality. The verdict was swift and decisive. Brittany was ordered to make full restitution to the insurance company. Her assets would be monitored, and any attempt to open new credit would trigger a report that would follow her for years. As we left the courthouse, she whispered to ask if I was happy now. I stopped, looked her directly in the eyes, and told her I wasn't happy, but I was finally whole. When she sneered and asked if I thought this made me better than them, I turned fully to face her and said no. It just made me free from her. Then I walked away. That evening, I closed the last tab on my laptop. Fraud reports, bank statements, insurance claims, all archived away. I opened a new folder and labeled it Boundaries Not Shared because I had learned that some doors needed to be permanently closed, not just temporarily shut. The closure didn't come from the court's decision or the financial restitution. It came from the quiet choice to stop being an open door for people who only knew how to take. I blocked Brittany's number and deleted Eleanor's without anger, but with the recognition that healing sometimes means accepting that some relationships are too broken to repair. The weeks that followed were remarkably peaceful. No emergencies, no desperate phone calls, no guilt-wrapped requests for help disguised as family obligations. I used the restored funds to hire a financial advisor, opened new business accounts with stricter protocols, and set up alerts for even the smallest charges. The security measures weren't just about protecting my money. They were about protecting my peace. One afternoon, I walked past a jewelry store and saw a simple gold bracelet in the window. It reminded me of one Brittany had borrowed years ago and never returned, one I had seen her wearing in social media posts while claiming she couldn't afford groceries. But this one was different. This one would be purchased with my card, with my name on the meter, receipt, worn on my wrist as a reminder that I had value beyond what I could provide for others. As I fastened the bracelet, I remembered something my grandmother used to say about how people who love you shouldn't make you prove it through sacrifice. I had spent years thinking that meant I needed to sacrifice more to earn love. Now I understood it meant that real love doesn't require sacrifice as proof of its existence. Love isn't measured by what you're willing to lose, but by what you're willing to protect, including yourself. The setting sun painted my office windows gold as I reviewed the quarterly reports for my business. Revenue was up 30%. Partly because I was no longer distracted by manufactured family crises. My phone sat silent on my desk. No longer a source of anxiety, but simply a tool for business. The success felt different now. Not like something I needed to share or justify or apologize for, but something that belonged entirely to me. Maya called to inform me that Brittany had started making payments to the insurance company. Small amounts that would take her decades to fully repay. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about accountability. Every payment would be a reminder that actions have consequences, that family bonds aren't licenses for exploitation, that love and enabling aren't synonymous. I thought about the family I had lost and realized I hadn't really lost them at all. You can't lose something you never truly had. What I had lost was the illusion that sacrifice would eventually be reciprocated, that being the responsible one would someday be appreciated. That family meant unconditional support rather than unconditional taking. Those illusions had been expensive. Not just financially, but emotionally. And letting them go was the best investment I had ever made. The business card that started it all still existed somewhere in evidence storage. A golden symbol of how trust can be weaponized by those who should protect it. But I had new cards now. Ones with better security features and stricter controls. Ones that represented not just my business but my boundaries. The gold didn't gleam quite as bright, but it was solid, genuine, and entirely under my control. Sitting in my office that evening, I pulled up my business plan for the next year. Expansion into new markets, hiring additional staff, maybe even opening a second office. None of these plans included contingencies for family emergencies or sudden financial drains from relatives. For the first time in my adult life, my future was entirely my own to shape, unencumbered by the weight of others' expectations or manufactured needs. The freedom felt strange at first, like wearing new shoes that hadn't been broken in yet. But with each passing day, it felt more natural, more like who I was supposed to be all along. I wasn't the selfish one for protecting myself. They were the selfish ones for expecting me not to. I wasn't cold for enforcing boundaries. They were cruel for repeatedly violating them. I wasn't destroying the family by seeking justice. They had destroyed it by committing injustice. Success, I learned, isn't just about what you achieve, but also about what you're willing to protect. Boundaries aren't walls that keep love out. They're fences that keep respect in. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst impulses, even if they never forgive you for it. Especially if they never forgive you for it. Because forgiveness from someone who sees you only as a resource isn't forgiveness at all. It's just a reset button for future exploitation. The Alyssa who would have absorbed this loss to keep the peace was gone, replaced by someone who understood that peace at any price isn't peace at all. It's just a postponement of war. And the interest on that postponement compounds daily until it becomes impossible to pay. Better to fight the battle when you choose than to wait until you have no choice left. Better to lose family who only valued what you could provide than to lose yourself trying to meet their endless needs. As I locked my office that night, the gold bracelet caught the last rays of sunlight. A small but significant reminder that I had chosen myself. Not in spite of family, but because of what family should actually mean. Protection, respect, mutual support. And yes, boundaries. The family I had lost had never offered these things. But the family I would build, whether through friendship, romance, or simply the relationship with myself, would have these as non-negotiable foundations. Walking to my car, I passed the spot where the eggs had been thrown weeks ago. The windshield had been replaced. The evidence cleaned away. But I remembered standing there that morning, looking at the damage and feeling strangely empowered. They could throw eggs, make threatening calls, spread rumors and lies, but they couldn't make me go back to who I was before. That person, the one who would have paid any price for the illusion of family harmony, was gone forever. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Without reading it, I deleted it and blocked the contact. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Some doors, once closed, should stay locked. And some people once revealed for who they truly are, should stay in the past where they belong. The future was too bright, too full of possibility, to waste on people who had proven they would dim that light every chance they got. The drive home was peaceful, the kind of quiet that comes not from absence but from resolution. Every red light was a moment to breathe. Every green light a small victory of forward momentum. The radio played something upbeat and forgettable, but I found myself singing along anyway, my voice filling the car with something that felt remarkably like joy. Not the complicated, conditional joy of family approval, but the simple, sustainable joy of self-respect. At home, I poured a glass of wine and stood on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brittany was probably spinning her version of events to anyone who would listen. Eleanor was likely playing the victim, claiming I had chosen money over blood. The extended family was undoubtedly choosing sides, creating dramatic narratives where I was the villain who had destroyed family unity over something as trivial as money. But up here, in my own space, paid for with my own success, protected by boundaries I had finally learned to enforce, their narratives held no power. The truth was simpler than they wanted to admit. I had chosen myself. And in their world, that was the ultimate betrayal. In my world, it was the beginning of everything. The wine tasted expensive because it was purchased without guilt or the need to calculate how much family crisis it could have solved instead. The view looked beautiful because I could enjoy it without waiting for the phone to ring with the next emergency. The silence felt complete because it wasn't filled with the white noise of other people's drama. This was what success actually felt like. Not the money or the business achievements, but the peace of knowing that everything in my life was there by choice, not obligation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new decisions to make. But none of them would involve sacrificing my well-being for people who had proven they would never reciprocate. None of them would require me to shrink myself to make others comfortable with their own failures. None of them would demand that I apologize for succeeding or share the fruits of my labor with those who had contributed nothing but chaos. The gold bracelet caught the light from my apartment as I went inside. A small reminder that sometimes the best investment you can make is in yourself. Every sacrifice I had made for family had depreciated immediately, providing temporary relief for them and permanent depletion for me. But every boundary I set, every standard I enforced, every moment I chose my own well-being over their wants had appreciated exponentially, building a foundation of self-respect that no amount of family pressure could erode. As I prepared for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not the exhausted caretaker, not the family ATM, not the responsible daughter who fixed everything. Just Alyssa, successful business owner, survivor of family exploitation, an architect of her own future. The reflection smiled back, and for the first time in memory, the smile reached my eyes. The story could have ended differently. I could have absorbed the loss, maintained the toxic peace, continued the cycle of exploitation disguised as family love. Brittany would have learned that there were no consequences for her actions. Eleanor would have continued enabling her, and I would have slowly dissolved into resentment and exhaustion. Instead, I chose the harder path, the one that led through conflict and isolation, but emerged into freedom and peace. They say blood is thicker than water, but the full quote, the one people conveniently forget, is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose, the relationships we build on mutual respect and genuine care, these are stronger than accidents of birth. The family I was born into had taught me what love wasn't. Now I had the freedom to learn what it actually was. The last thought before sleep was simple but profound. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. Healing doesn't demand reunion. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to love them from a distance so vast that their chaos can no longer reach you. Not because you wish them harm, but because you finally wish yourself well. Tomorrow would be another day of freedom. Another opportunity to build something beautiful without fear of it being destroyed by those who should have protected it. The golden cage of family obligation had been unlocked. Not by them finally recognizing my worth, but by me finally recognizing it myself. And that recognition, That fundamental shift from sacrifice to self-preservation was worth more than any amount they could have stolen. The city hummed its nighttime lullaby as I drifted off to sleep, no longer listening for the phone to ring, no longer braced for the next crisis, just present in my own peace, complete in my own company, and finally, beautifully, impossibly free.